Is America actually finished? Or is it sitting on a geographic cheat code that makes it mathematically impossible to fail? Every day the headlines scream about the decline of the West. You hear about the shifting tides of global gold, the rise of manufacturing giants in the East, and the internal friction tearing at the fabric of the Republic. Pundits on every channel argue over policies, presidents, and protests. But they are all missing the only thing that actually matters: the 3.8 million square miles of dirt, rock, and water that make up the United States. You see, history isn't just a series of random events or the result of great leaders. It's a high-stakes game of Texas, hold'em where the cards were dealt millions of years ago by shifting tectonic plates and melting glaciers. While most nations were dealt a 2-7 offsuit, the United States walked away with a royal flush. In this video, we aren't looking at the news cycle. We're looking at the silent architect of power. We're going to show you why the US isn't just a country. It's a fortress protected by physics, a factory powered by geology, and a merchant empire built on the greatest river system in human history. Geography is the ultimate destiny, and the ground beneath American feet ensures it remains the world's last true superpower. The map is the game. To understand why the US is the final boss of geopolitics, you have to stop looking at the news and start looking at the map. Think of human history as a massive, real-time strategy game. When you spawn into the world, your starting location determines your difficulty setting. If you spawn in a landlocked desert with hostile neighbors, you're playing on legendary difficulty. You will spend every cent of your GDP just trying to keep the lights on and the invaders out. But if you spawn in a temperate paradise with massive natural walls and internal highways of water, you've hit the jackpot. Most people think of the United States as a political entity defined by the Constitution, but before the first word of the Constitution was ever written, the American miracle was already set in stone. The US occupies the best piece of real estate on the planet. It is the only nation that possesses the holy trinity of power: total food security, total energy potential, and total physical invulnerability. The fortress of two oceans. Let's start with the most obvious advantage: the moats. In the history of warfare, the hardest thing to do is an amphibious assault. Crossing a river to fight an enemy is hard. Crossing an ocean is nearly impossible. The United States is flanked by the two largest moats on Earth, the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. To the east, the Atlantic puts 4,000 miles of water between Washington and the chaos of Europe. To the west, the Pacific creates a 6,000-mile buffer between the US and the rising powers of Asia. For an enemy to even reach the American coast with a meaningful force, they would need a supply chain longer than any in human history. But the protection doesn't stop at the water. To the north, you have Canada, a culturally aligned, friendly neighbor. To the south, you have Mexico, separated by the vast, inhospitable Chihuahuan and Sonoran deserts. The US is essentially an island nation on a continental scale. It has no peer competitors in its own hemisphere. Even if an enemy managed to land on the coast, they would immediately face the Appalachian Mountains in the east or the impenetrable Sierra Nevada and Rockies in the west. These aren't just hills, they are massive jagged barriers that make moving an army inland a logistical nightmare. The geography of the US is designed to swallow armies whole. The Mississippi, the world's greatest cheat code. But being safe is only half the battle. You also have to be rich. The real engine of American power is the Mississippi River Basin. This is the single greatest geographic advantage in the history of our species. It's not just one river, it's a massive interconnected web of over 14,000 miles of navigable waterways that stretches into the very core of the continent. Why does this matter? Because moving things by water is roughly 12 times cheaper than moving them by land. Imagine a farmer in the American Midwest, the breadbasket of the world. Because of the Mississippi and its tributaries, the Missouri, the Ohio, the Arkansas, that farmer can grow a mountain of grain, put it on a barge, and float it thousands of miles down to the Gulf of Mexico for pennies. In almost every other part of the planet, mountains or waterfalls get in the way. But in the US, the rivers flow through the most fertile land on Earth directly to the open ocean. This creates an internal market where goods move across thousands of miles for nearly zero cost. This system generates more capital, more efficiently, than any other landmass on the planet. The fertility of the heartland. It's not just the water, it's the dirt. The American Midwest sits on a layer of topsoil that is some of the richest on the planet. During the last ice age, glaciers acted like giant sandpaper, grinding up rocks and minerals and depositing them across the Great Plains. When those glaciers melted, they left behind a gift: low S soil. This soil is deep, nutrient-dense, and perfectly drained. While other nations have to spend billions on synthetic fertilizers to keep their people fed, the US can produce a massive surplus of food with relative ease. This surplus is a strategic weapon. When you can feed your own population and still have enough left over to export to the rest of the world, you have food sovereignty. You aren't vulnerable to global price spikes or famines. The American heartland is the ultimate insurance policy for national survival, the jagged coast and the Great Lakes. While the heartland is connected by rivers, the edges of the US are built for global trade. Melting glaciers carved out deep-water harbors all along the North American coast. The US East Coast is jagged, full of bays and natural ports like Chesapeake Bay and New York Harbor. These are deep, calm waters where the largest ships on Earth can dock right at the edge of the land. Nature essentially gave the United States dozens of free parking spots for the world's merchant fleets. And we can't forget the Great Lakes. This is the largest system of fresh surface water on Earth. It's essentially a second internal ocean that connects the industrial heart of the Midwest to the Atlantic. This allows the US to move steel, cars, and coal from the middle of the country to the rest of the world with unparalleled efficiency. The sheer volume of freshwater also provides a massive advantage for manufacturing and data centers, which require massive amounts of cooling, something most nations can only dream of. The Intercoastal Waterway, the hidden shield. One of the most underrated parts of American geography is the Intracoastal Waterway. This is a 3,000-mile stretch of natural and man-made canals that runs along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. A ship can travel from New Jersey all the way down to Florida and then around to Texas without ever having to enter the open ocean. They are protected by a chain of barrier islands that block the wind and waves of the Atlantic. This means that even in the middle of a massive hurricane or a global naval war, American domestic trade can continue completely uninterrupted. While other nations' trade routes are vulnerable to pirates or enemy blockades in the open sea, the US has a backdoor highway that is physically impossible for an enemy navy to touch. It is the ultimate insurance policy for an economy. Energy independence and the shale revolution. For decades, critics said the US was addicted to foreign oil. But geology eventually solved that problem. Deep beneath the soil of Texas, North Dakota, and Pennsylvania lie some of the largest shale oil and gas deposits on the planet. Thanks to the shale revolution, the US didn't just become energy independent, it became a net exporter. This changed the global game of power. While other superpowers have to spend trillions to secure oil from the Middle East, the US can simply pump it out of its own backyard. This makes the American economy shock-proof. If a war breaks out in the Persian Gulf and oil prices triple, the US is the only major power that won't see its economy collapse. The Permian Basin in Texas alone is a geographic gift that ensures the US will remain the world's energy powerhouse for the next century. The intermodal edge. Finally, we have the intermodal advantage. Because the US is a flat, open continent between its major mountain ranges, it was able to build the world's most efficient freight rail network. This rail network doesn't compete with the rivers, it complements them. The US has perfected the art of intermodal transport, taking a container off a ship, putting it on a barge, and then transferring it to a train that carries it across the flat plains. This seamless integration makes the US the most efficient logistics machine ever built. It's the secret sauce that keeps American products competitive on the global stage. The endurance of the superpower. When you view the world through the lens of geography, the chaos of the daily news cycle starts to fade away. Governments will change, leaders will come and go, but the mountains do not move, the rivers do not change their course. Geography is the base layer of reality. It sets the difficulty setting for every nation. While other countries have to work 10 times harder just to survive, the United States can make massive mistakes and still come out on top because its geographic foundation is so incredibly forgiving. Can you feed your people? Yes. The Midwest is the most productive farmland on Earth. Can you protect your borders? Yes. The oceans and the Rockies are the ultimate shields. Can you trade with the world? Yes. The deep water ports, the Mississippi, and the Intercoastal Waterway make it the most efficient trade hub in history. The US didn't become a superpower just because of freedom. It became a superpower because it won the greatest lottery in the history of the planet. As long as the Mississippi flows south and the oceans remain wide, the United States will remain the house that the Earth itself built to lead. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel for future updates.